Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm now back from uni for the summer break. I haven't uploaded for ages. I know I've had uni work going on. We've not long moved house at uni, but I've still been reading, so I've got loads of book reviews done that I just haven't recorded yet. I'm hoping to get a few recorded whilst I'm back home. Today I have got Binding 13 by Chloe Walsh. My sister gave this to me because she wants to know if the series is worth reading. This is 801 pages. It has a 4.5-star rating on Goodreads and took me 5 days to finish. When two worlds collide, nothing will ever be the same again. Johnny Kavanagh has everything going for him, primed for stardom, and the rugby pitch is a force to be reckoned with. Nothing will stop him hitting the heights, not even the shy new girl at Tommen College, with sad eyes and hidden bruises, the one that distracts him as no one else has. Life has never been easy for Shannon Lynch. She arrives at the prestigious private school praying for a fresh start, desperate to shake off the demons that plague her. On her very first day, she encounters the notorious Johnny Kavanagh. Instantly drawn to him, Shannon finds herself once again the target of bullies as she forms a fragile alliance with rugby's rising star. But as they fall into a complicated friendship and grapple with their undeniable chemistry, Johnny and Shannon cannot foresee the obstacles that will threaten their blossoming relationship. Halfway through the first chapter, the girls' coming-of-age theme was very clear, and fortunately it's something that I'm quite familiar with in literature. This novel does contain mature language from the offset. I felt that accentuated the coming-of-age theme. I discovered at the second chapter that this novel uses dual point of view, using Johnny and Shannon as narrators. After reading the synopsis, I was quite excited about this and knew that I would be spending the rest of that evening reading. I also love chapter titles. This is very much a young adult romance, and that definitely shows through this book's humour. I was laughing and cringing a lot throughout the first few chapters. Honestly, I felt that I could relate a lot to Johnny with regards to going out of your way to make sure that a woman doesn't feel uncomfortable around you just because you're a man. It was written brilliantly. Another relationship that I feel this book depicts perfectly is the one between a young adult and a parent, especially when it comes to their child's romantic dilemmas. I did find it quite amusing. The humour throughout this novel is very representative of the young adult coming-of-age theme, and I honestly found the humour hilarious throughout. I was almost halfway through this novel on my second day of reading when I realised that I didn't actually know if I liked the idea of Johnny and Shannon together. I did to begin with, but I felt it became clearer that he started to view her just for her body, which didn't really sit well with me. I'm sure I've mentioned before in another review, I've grown up in a family of women, and so I'm aware that I have an innate respect for and appreciation of women that a lot of men my age typically don't. So with regards to that, the way that Johnny started to talk about and view Shannon almost halfway through this novel really riled me. Oh my goodness, this book made me feel like such a child with regards to my response to Shannon's mum trying to interfere in her life because obviously she knows what's best. It was beyond irritating, but obviously that's also a sign of brilliant writing. However, it was a complete breath of relief when Shannon was eventually brutally honest with her mother. Her mum is trying to interfere in her life because she thinks Shannon is being bullied. Shannon turns around and says the biggest bully lives under this very roof, referring to her abusive dad. And it's this mic drop moment. Her mum is about to phone the school to say that Johnny is a bad influence, which he really isn't. And Shannon says that if she does that, she'll tell the school about how abusive her dad is. And I was so torn between admiration for her standing up to her mum and also being so annoyed because she shouldn't have to do that. I love this trope. Okay, so Johnny is your typical bad boy, and he has a reputation, but he also has such a weakness for Shannon, and I'm so here for it. It's adorable. Oh my goodness, 320 pages before the first time that the guy, Johnny, kind of let himself admit that he had feelings for Shannon. And at this point, I'm absolutely here for it. That trope of the bad boy having a weakness for one girl, I was lapping it up at this point. We'd had the perfect amount of tension and build up, and now there's this whole other situation that Shannon's having to deal with that makes Johnny all but livid, and I could not put the book down. Oh my goodness. Okay, so I'm not typically a fan of or advocate for people speaking with their fists, but when Johnny does get somewhat physical for the sake of defending Shannon's honour, I was all for it. It was just written brilliantly. No, exactly halfway through, things started to go not so well, but it was also kind of called for because things were slightly too perfect, and obviously we know that perfect isn't realistic and therefore isn't relatable. So this twist did read really well, but I certainly wasn't happy about it. Just over halfway through the book, I found out that Bad Boy Johnny has two dogs, each with a bright pink collar, called Bonnie and Cupcake. It just made me love him a bit more. It was a tiny thing, and I felt like such a reader and fanboy for the way that I reacted, but I freaked out the first time that Johnny calls Shannon Shan. I just felt that it was so significant, and it was adorable. Just over halfway through, Shannon ends up needing a change of clothes, and wears some of Johnny's clothes. My inner fanboy is freaking out, but I'm also wondering how things are going to pan out in the long run with regards to both of their parents' thoughts on their relationship. This is brilliant writing, giving your reader something to root for and giving them hope for that thing, but also giving them reason to believe that it might not happen. Anyway, so Shannon showers and Johnny leaves a change of clothes for her on the bed. Shannon picks the clothes up and realises that he's also left her a pair of boxers out. Now, if you're a teen or young adult romance reader, you can imagine my reaction to this scene. I had to put the book down and freak out to my friend Josh, explaining in depth what had just happened. The next day, I was determined to finish this book. Oh my goodness. So, Johnny is this bad boy character, but just over halfway through the novel, Shannon makes him blush. And I was all over it, I loved it. Johnny makes it clear that he feels a lot stronger about his emotional connection with Shannon than he does about any of his purely physical relationships with gorgeous girls who are all over him. Like I said, I'm so here for it, and my respect for Johnny is increasing again as I continue reading. I love how Shannon and Johnny's relationship grows and develops throughout this book because you see it happen, and keeping your reader in the know on that journey is a surefire way to build reader investment. If the content isn't boring, you don't want to run the risk of boring your reader with every little detail, but Chloe Walsh gets that balance just right, and I struggle to put this book down. So, Johnny and Shannon's brother end up talking, and it just doesn't help anything. Johnny asks about the bruises on Shannon's body, and Joey just says, "Ask her yourself." I'm just thinking this is not going to end well. So I was over halfway through this novel when it became one that made me slightly worried about how Walsh came up with the plot. Usually when I feel this way, it's some disturbing dystopia universe like Veronica Roth's Divergent or Suzanne Collins' Hunger Games. But for this, it was just how accurately and detailed that the trauma was written that both concerned me and made me continue reading. And then for there to be an amazing romance plot too, well, for my bookworm self, that was just the cherry on top. Page 459, I was livid. I was stressed and upset, and honestly I thought, how on earth am I supposed to carry on reading? But obviously I did. I had 300 pages left. I was very stressed. Johnny had finally accepted that he cared about and had feelings for Shannon, and that there was nothing he could do about that. So he finally confides in his friends, who basically, I'm sorry, end up talking out their asses because Johnny's being honest about his emotions and they're still treating him as their mate with a bad boy reputation. But at this point, I'm just thinking, I need to finish this book. So Shannon's father is abusive to her mother, and to her brothers. He does end up leaving, and I'm convinced they might have a chance to rebuild. Then, at the start of the chapter, as I feel I might be approaching the end of the plot, he comes back, and I'm exhausted at this point. Something that I loved about this book was that as I read it, there was little to no consistency in chapter length. I don't know why, but I love that. Oh my goodness. Okay, so there's a whole context to this, but Shannon meets Johnny's mum, who assumes that they're together. Shannon and his mum are talking, and she explains that they're just friends, because that's what she thinks they are, and isn't really sure what label might be most appropriate. And Johnny's mum says, "Oh, that's a shame. For a moment there, I thought you'd managed to do the impossible." My jaw dropped. I cannot stress how much this book turned me into a complete fanboy. I spent most of the time reading this freaking out over how cute something was or the obvious tension in a particular scene. Honestly, this was a really refreshing read. Just over 500 pages in, I was thinking, they've got to sleep together, which really speaks to this writing because that's not typically how I think when it comes to literature. I love a backstory, I love a good bit of tension, but there was so much tension between Shannon and Johnny at this point. I was thinking if he touches her again, they're going to spontaneously combust. But of course, I also loved this whole situation. Lo and behold, the next chapter was titled I'm a Virgin. My stomach was freaking out. I love that bad boy Johnny is still just mummy's little boy to his mum. And Johnny's mum can see so obviously that he has feelings for Shannon. And so at this point, Johnny's mum says to him everything that you, as the reader, have been thinking for the past however many chapters, which was quite the relief. At, at the height of a scene of tension, the mother of bad boy and ladies' man Johnny decides to have the talk with him, and I'm thinking, what on earth is going on? I waited 500 pages for this kiss. I had to allow myself to freak out before I could even read it properly. I was over halfway through this book when I realised that what was most frustrating was also so bittersweet. I love dual point of view. However, as a result of that, the reader knows exactly how both Shannon and Johnny are feeling and how they both feel about each other. So their lack of communication is beyond irritating. And I was reading, getting irritated and huffing and puffing at this point. Honestly, I felt so cheated. They'd finally got to a point where they were on the same page, having admitted how they felt about each other, and Johnny tells her it's not right for them to be together because he's a little over a year older than her. Part of me did think, get a grip. But then I rationalised things and realised that at the end of adolescence going into adulthood, there is an age bracket where it isn't socially acceptable to be dating. But I'd spent 500 pages growing investment in this relationship. I didn't really know what to think. So I actually said out loud, oh my goodness me. Johnny and Shannon are not a toxic couple, but their struggle to communicate is very painful as a reader, but it did make for amazing literature. With 200 pages left, my stomach felt sick with anxiety. I had a few possible endings in mind, but I did not know what was about to happen. I'm going to take a risk saying something on this channel, but I'll say it because it was somewhat relieving to read. I have grown up in a family of women. I have lived in a family of women for 25 years. I'm aware that there is a lot that I don't know. I'm also aware that there is a lot that I've learned from being in my family over the past 25 years. And it was relieving to read Shannon respond to certain things in particular ways, which my immediate thought was, oh, she's responding like that because she's a woman. Hear me out here. When I've witnessed women respond to something in a particular way before, never have I thought, oh, you're responding like that because you're a woman. I just think I have too much respect for women to ever think anything like that. Then I read this book, which to a T depicts the reaction I have witnessed many women have to something that's equally provoking in the same way, at which point I hadn't thought that that reaction was warranted at all. And honestly, to any women watching this, I love you, I have so much respect for you, but it was like a weight lifted knowing that when I've witnessed this reaction before, it wasn't a reaction to that situation, it was just a response. Chloe Walsh, if you see this, I have no idea if you'll know what on earth I'm on about or if I'm anywhere near the truth, but thank you so much. Shortly after this chapter, I heard myself say out loud, insecure girls are vile, and I allowed myself to say that because I believe there's a distinct difference between girls and women, and that difference is not always anything to do with age. But we'll move swiftly on from that because my channel is not the place to discuss such things. In the last few hundred pages of this novel, my respect for Johnny doubled at the least. The self-control and restraint that he exercised for Shannon's sake. Not a lot of guys would have done it, and yes, I'm aware that he's fictional, but that's the representation that I want, not all the men out there giving us a bad name. But then, in just over the last 100 pages, this book addresses all of the stereotypical high school girl traits that people can have. And honestly, at this point, I just wanted to finish the book because it was stressing me out ever so slightly. With just over 100 pages left, Johnny decides to be very vulnerable with Shannon, and I don't really know where the plot is going at this point. The last few chapters are all just rugby and emotions, and it was a number of hours that I could not put this book down until I finished it that afternoon. Everything changes in these last few chapters, especially the way that Johnny and Shannon view and think of each other. The reader knows this because obviously you get there in a monologue, and if you are a romance fan, all I can say is I was freaking out. Oh my goodness, I felt that there was a possibility hinted at just before the end of the book that would have had me livid. I would have thrown the book down. My stomach was tight, I felt stressed. That situation didn't turn out to be what happened, but there is no doubt in my mind that Chloe Walsh knew exactly what she was doing when she wrote the scene. With 5 chapters left, I like to think that it was at this point they had their first actual kiss. As in a kiss where they both knew where they stood with each other, they both knew that it was romantic. Things have been very painful up until this point, but it's been so worth it for this moment. I was freaking out, I kept switching from reading to freaking out to my friend and back to reading again. So Johnny tells his parents how he feels about Shannon moments before she walks into the hospital room that they're in, so she can see him. This book has reignited my passion for romance literature, and in particular, young adult romance, reminding me that it doesn't need to be about vampires and werewolves all of the time. I don't want to get smutty, but there was a lot of sexual tension throughout this book. Shannon and Johnny don't sleep together, and although in context it does make sense, as a reader I felt somewhat cheated. I explained this to my sister, who immediately told me there's a sequel. So let me know in the comments if you want to see that on my channel. Please like and subscribe and hit the notification bell so you know when I upload my next video.